All right. Now we are really calling this meeting of the Plan Commission to order now that we are streaming. We will start with the roll call.
Adams,
Here.
Bruce,
Here.
Erdman Hermans,
Here.
Harp,
Here.
Summers,
Here.
Alder Haniro,
Here.
and Mayor Kuhn is present on the Zoom.
All right, thank you. Our first item on the agenda is the public hearing for the conditional use permit for expansion of the Six Society parking at 3307 and 3309 High Road. It is now 7:05 PM, so we will start the hearing. Is there anyone here to speak? Anyone? Anyone online interested in speaking about the conditional use permit? All right. Having no comments, it is still 7:05, and we will end the public hearing and move on to our next item of business, which is approval of the minutes of the August 8th, 2023 Plan Commission meeting. Does anybody have comments or corrections to the minutes? I had a couple on page 12. If you bring that up, Daphne, they're minor. Zoning complaints were heard. I'm trying to think of where it is. It should be somewhere in here. If you search for currently being handed, it's the phrase. I think it's supposed, I had asked a question about who's going to do the enforcement. So I think that should be currently being handled by the planning staff, not handed in by the planning staff. And then later on this page, it makes a reference to legal confirming, and I think it should say legal conforming.
Got him.
Okay. So
Yeah. Here's the
here it
ring.
comes. Okay, so without objection, we'll make those changes to the minutes. All right, and the minutes then are approved. All right, moving on to our next item of business, the specific implementation plan modification to reclassify 12 lots from estate to nest for Bell Farm Phase 1. Staff, would you like to give us a 1-minute summary?
Yep, very briefly, throughout the course of this development, the lots that are shown with the yellow dots here on the screen, the 3 or 4 kind of in the center, those lots all shrunk up significantly because of the buffer that was added between the single family lots and the wetland area. And so what the developer is requesting is, given those lot sizes being smaller, that they would like to reduce, primarily it's the rear setback that they're concerned about, because they were classified as estate homes and that would require a 30-foot rear setback. So given the smaller lot sizes, what they are proposing is that they would just like to reclassify all of those to nest, so that that entire street area is all uniform, with shorter setback distances on the front, the sides, and in the rear. Really the primary concern that we had was how it would affect impervious surface ratios that were calculated in the stormwater management plan. But after speaking with our assistant public works director, he thought that the difference would be negligible, especially given that there was more wetland that was being dedicated, which was the cause of the lot size getting smaller. But he would like to require that their engineer prepare some updated information, and that he would make a determination whether the impact is significant or insignificant. So our staff is recommending approval as a minor SIP modification subject to their engineer preparing information and our engineer confirming that the difference is negligible.
Okay, and just a question, it's still going to be 12 lots, correct? It's just nest, not estate. And parking for estate homes is 2 stalls per unit, but for nest homes, it's 1. So the parking needs will go down as a result.
That is true. Yes, I should have flagged that as well. I only focused in on the setbacks, but that's true.
Okay.
Abby, staff at all concerned about losing one type of housing in a way? I mean, we've got, it was truly a mixed development, one that we really hadn't seen for quite a while. And now it's kind of compressing that a little bit. I don't think the 12 lots, the change for the 12 lots means much. I just want to find out what staff's thoughts were on that.
I think like when you compare this development to most of the residential subdivisions that we've seen, it has such a range of housing types compared to a more traditional subdivision. So while we talked about that and, you know, it is removing one option, there still is really a nice mix in the development overall. So we weren't too concerned about it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mark or Daphne, would you please bring up the agenda so we can see the staff recommendation? Makes it easier for getting a motion. Okay, so at the bottom of the screen is the recommended action from staff. Who would like to move approval?
Bruce will make a motion for approval as a minor SIP modification subject to the developer's engineer preparing information regarding the impervious surface area calculations and impact to the stormwater management plan, and the assistant city engineer determining the impact is insignificant.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Erdman Herman, second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
It looks like Kathleen Slattery Moshkow, the developer, has raised her hand on the Zoom.
Oh, okay, I did not see her. So yes, well, Kathleen, are you there? Can you? unmute?
Yes, I am. And as I'm sitting here, I did not realize that we would be losing a parking spot per. Is that, I did not realize we would be losing a parking spot per home. So we would not be able to have a two-car, maybe this isn't the place to discuss this, because I don't want to take away time from Plan Commission, but I was not aware, I just wasn't processing the fact that there would be a change in parking. Is it possible to maintain the two-car garage for the nest homes?
I think this is the right time to bring that up. And I was
Okay.
just going according to the document that was shared, because it shows for nest homes, it's 23 units and 23 stalls. And estate homes, it's 22 units and 44 stalls. So I was just doing the simple math.
And I took those to mean parking minimums because that's typically that's how our code currently handles it. So I was under the impression, and I'm pulling up the document myself here just to double check that. I thought that that would just be the minimum stalls, but that they would still be able to.
It's higher up.
Oh, here, I have my own separate document. Do you have it up there, Daphne?
Is this what you're
Yeah.
looking at?
Yes.
Okay.
So if we're interpreting that as minimum and not actual parking, is staff okay with that?
If the Plan Commission would be comfortable with the nest homes that are being changed, the 12 units having between 12 to 24 stalls, then yes, that's how I would interpret that.
I had a similar interpretation.
Do we need to amend the motion to include that?
I think that that would be the safest way to handle that.
So
I,
Commissioner Bruce, if you would make a new motion, is what will happen. Make a new motion repeating all of this, but then adding what would staff recommend with the understanding or with parking for the nest homes
being between 12 and
being
20.
between 12 and 24 stalls.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'll make a replacement motion to approve as a minor SIP modification subject to the developer's engineer preparing information regarding the impervious surface area calculations and impact to the stormwater management plan, and the assistant city engineer determining the impact is insignificant. This is with the understanding that the nest homes, that the 12 lots that were changed from estate to nest homes will have a parking of between 12 and 24 parking stalls total.
I'm sorry, could I tried to raise my hand, but I think this is Kathleen, the developer again. I'm so sorry. If I could just say one more thing on I guess my point was that on the nest homes in general, I'm hoping to have the ability to have up to 2 parking spaces. Again, I think in my head, I was interpreting those as minimums, and on the example lot plans that we had submitted previously for the nest homes, somewhere along the process, we were showing a 2-car garage. So I guess I'm hoping that what we're discussing right now can apply to all those nest homes. So it would be a total of 24 nest homes. So that makes up because there were 12 nest homes, we're calling another 12 nest homes. So that would be 48 stalls, because if it up to 48 stalls.
Thank you, Kathleen. I'm going to say that needs to be taken up separately, because that would apply. I mean, this question of what do the numbers on this chart that's showing mean, that applies for all the homes in phase 1. And it's not noticed on the agenda that that's what we're talking about doing. So
Okay.
I'm going to recommend that nobody second Commissioner Bruce's amended motion, and that we go forward with the original motion as included in the agenda. And Kathleen, perhaps at the next Plan Commission meeting, we can address this issue on a bigger scale.
Okay.
Do you concur with that?
Without seeing the full GIP document, I don't know for certain if the language is that these are minimums or if there's flexibility within the GIP. It's possible that there is. So I think it's a zoning interpretation on the other 12 that she's requesting information on, which we would need to research in the files, because we only have 1 page included in the packet. I would think that if the Plan Commission felt comfortable, you could go ahead and approve it for the 12 that are noticed on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioners?
Yeah, agreed. I mean, we've always talked about these as minimums on every project. So I think
Okay.
it's fair to assume that a broad interpretation would follow the standard we've been using.
Okay, so Commissioner Bruce's motion pertains only to the 12 lots in question.
Yeah.
Would somebody like to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. All right, so we have a substitute and we have a second for that. And the 12 to 24 stalls is only pertaining to the 12 lots that are noticed, and staff will work with the developer to figure out if we need to take further action at another meeting. Okay, any more discussion? Kathleen, are you okay with this?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Sure. All right, there being no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion to approve as a minor SIP modification, subject to the developer's engineer preparing information regarding the impervious surface area calculations and impact to the stormwater management plan, and the assistant city engineer determining the impact is insignificant, but the understanding that the 12 nest lots will have between 12 and 24 parking stalls total, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on to the next agenda item, we have the specific implementation plan modification for design review revisions, Land's End at Greenway Station, 1651 Deming Way.
Commissioner Summers needs to abstain from this agenda item. This is a minor exterior alteration to an existing retail store to make way for a new Land's End at Greenway Station. It includes demolishing the existing canopy and tower and then a new exterior color scheme. We really liked it. We thought it added a lot of freshness to the shopping center. It looks really nice. And we are recommending design review approval as a minor SIP modification. And also just wanted to note that Steve Doran from Galway Properties is on the Zoom in case there are any questions.
All right, thank you. Someone like to make a motion so we can start discussion? And the recommendation from staff is design review approval as a minor SIP modification.
Adams will make the motion to approve design as a minor SIP modification.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Purple second.
Thank you. All right, discussion.
I wanted to compliment the developer on the continuing reinvestment that's happening at Greenway, and I'm encouraged by it. I think it's it's obviously important to the community, and I like seeing the new stores coming in. It's great. My only comment about this particular design is that it's just style wise, it's kind of a departure from what's there. And I didn't know I guess I would just leave it up to the developer and their architectural team to decide if any kind of intermediate treatment of just, I think that's the roof, the cornice line that really does it for me. And maybe there's some details that could be pulled from the rest of the center that might be able to tie in better. But that's not a condition of approval. It's just a suggestion that they take a look at it.
Okay, thank you.
I also have
Thank you.
with the lack of continuity in the original development of this. I wasn't part of the plan commission, but it appears that it was very consistent intentionally, and it brought in elements of this prairie style with the posts and this, the large eaves, the hipped roofs, and this muted color scheme. And yeah, there are multiple departures from that that require demolition. So you have the bright white, you have an awning instead of the extended eaves. You're missing the beams and you've taken out the hipped roof. So while I understand that the branding is significant to Land's End, it does seem like this would be a change that would start a chain effect that will make this start to look like the Johnson Creek Outlet Mall instead of an upscale Middleton development. So I guess I do have that concern.
I'm happy to address that if I'm able to.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, I didn't know if I was on mute or people could hear me, but this is Steve Dorn with Galway Companies. I'm the manager of Greenway Shopping Center, and I appreciate the input. Our intent is to over time change the appearance with continued retailers here to make it more vibrant. Since we took over management of the shopping center, the feedback we've gotten from new retailers that we've tried to curate into the shopping center are, it all blends together. It looks blah. Nobody has a unique identity. And like what we're trying to do with Land's End and what Cooper's Hawk Winery did, we're really trying to create a selection of upper end retailers for the residents of Middleton, similar to how Hilldale has done at Hilldale Mall in Madison. If you kind of look at what they've done over there, each retailer really has an individual unique brand and identity that helps draw in shoppers, and it kind of makes it a little bit more of a vibrant experience for people that are approaching the center. So that really is our goal.
So,
Commissioners.
Steve, this is Commissioner Bruce. Is there a plan for architectural treatment moving forward that would place this in a consistent, consistent with future architecture, or will everything be a kind of a one-off?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough. We certainly want everything to blend together, right? We've been very, very careful here not to put in retailers that are not going to benefit one another and make each other successful, as well as blend together. And so we do look very carefully at, for example, this Land's End. What are we gonna, let's say Chico's wants to remodel in the future, or Chico's becomes something other than Chico's. What is that going to look like, right? Is there a good way to make that blend in together with Land's End to continue on with maybe not the exact same thing as what Land's End has, but something that goes well together and blends well together. So it's really tough to put together a master plan, if you will, of what we think this thing is going to look like long term, because it really is sort of dependent on the retailers that come in, and they sort of have their own individual look. But for example, Land's End wanted to do some other things here which we didn't feel were very, they wanted a higher parapet than what's there. We kept that parapet consistent because we want that to be consistent kind of at a height level long term with what other people are going to do. Sure, there could be some variations here and there, but we don't want them 10 foot higher than other people. So it's going to depend on the retailers that come in, but we are going to be very careful to make sure that it all blends well together and it's cohesive.
I see Mayor Kuhn has her hand raised.
Thanks. I just wanted to say that I appreciate you listening to the companies that are interested in coming to Greenway Station. I do love that area, and I know it's well loved. And I do love that we're getting some new folks in. I just want to say that I used to live at Hilldale Mall, and we bought before the transition, and it was unsettling to folks. And then all of a sudden it came in and people loved it, and there was even more foot traffic. So I will say that I trust this listening to the customers and the people wanting to move in and make it even more so vibrant. And I am fine with that design.
Thank you. Any other comments from commissioners over here?
I would just ask the applicant to keep design consistency in mind as you move forward. Certainly the mix of retailers is very important, in getting that right. It, outweighs some of the aesthetics, obviously, but hopefully you can keep good control and work with staff. I don't know if there's anything in the SIP that talks about architectural standards, but maybe something in the PUD documents might be needed. That's it.
Staff, can you comment on that?
I don't recall seeing guidance on the architectural standards aside from the actual design documents that were submitted, but I can go back and look at that and work with Steve on that.
I'm not particularly comfortable with taking out the architectural elements that really make it feel like an upscale place to be. The post and beam, the overhangs, the hipped roofs, that really makes it feel like Middleton to me. Well, I love Land's End. I mean, I've been a customer since a teenager, and I'd like to see it there. I would like to maintain the integrity for all the other retailers of it being an upscale location. I'm concerned about installing awnings and taking down a roof. That's significant.
Any other comments from commissioners? All right, so we have a motion and a second. Mayor Kuhn, do you have any last comments?
Nope.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the specific implementation, I'm sorry, the design review approval as a minor SIP modification for Land's End at Greenway Station, 1651 Deming Way, signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
Gretchen.
All right, the ayes have it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And staff, you will follow up to let us know if there were standards written in. Okay,
We will take a look at that and we'll also work with the applicant on that.
okay, thank you. All right, moving on to the next item of business. It is concept review for a self-storage facility at 2010 Pleasant View Road. And I believe we have Mr. Brian Beaulieu. All right, would you like to tell us anything? Please step up to the microphone.
I think we have folks that are logged in.
Oh, okay.
So whoever is sharing should be able to share their screen now and start with their presentation.
Is it Michelle?
Yeah. Hi, good evening. Everyone see that?
Yes, we can.
In control? Okay, good evening. Hi. Michelle Bach with EAPC, and we appreciate everyone having us on the agenda tonight. We're here representing 1784 Holdings out of Arizona for a proposed self-storage facility in Middleton. We are on the corner of Pleasant View Road and University Ave, adjacent to an existing gas station. As you come in exit off of Pleasant View Road and kind of wind around to the west. The proposed site plan for our project sets off of Pleasant View to further develop into our property, we're proposing a 2-story climate-controlled self-storage building, fully interior, including the loading. Well, as you come in, you'll be directly in front of our proposed loading area, which is all interior to the facility. There are automatic doors that open that are key code accessed, and then all loading vehicles can load and unload in a secure area out of any weather elements. And it is a full drive-through, so there's no backing up that is needed. You will go one way through the facility and back out the west end of the property. We're proposing a full drive around the entire facility to help with that one-way traffic through. It is a 2-story facility, so on each side of the drive-through, there will be planned stairs and elevators so that the second floor can span over the drive-through for full access. And then our main lobby area located on the first floor is directly adjacent to this loading area, so that we have both customers and future and existing tenants all being able to see coming in and out of the facility by our on-site managers. The proposed design of the facility uses several different materials, from thin brick, integral color stucco, some metal elements with our vertical fins and awnings over our windows. We have glazing elements and some block features on the first floor. The office that I was pointing out is on the east elevation, where we have some vision glass and storefront area for our main office, with the loading doors directly adjacent to it. The loading doors are glass as well, so that you can see in and out of the drive-through, and it creates a more open, inviting door versus a solid metal roll-up door. They're the same doors on both sides. The second floor windows are using a spandrel glazing versus a vision glass, but we do have a few tower elements on the corners proposed that use a vision glass where we can see some display doors for a little bit of marketing on each corner. Our height is being proposed at 35 feet to the top of our tower elements. It ranges from 33 feet up to 35 feet with some of our roofline variation. That is maxing out the allowed per our zoning designation. And then these are a few 3D images of those elevations. This is on the left-hand side as you're coming into the property and wrapping around the south side of the building. These tower elements are loading area and office area in the center of the property with customer parking. The tower elements again wrapping on the south side in the rear. And then again on the north side of the property facing Pleasant View Road. Four-sided architecture around all sides, and on the rear you can see again how our driveway is wrapping around the entire property for circulation. The property is not gated as all of the storage is within the facility, and we have no exterior roll-up doors for customers. So all functions and all storage is inside. There are also in the display areas, these are purely marketing areas. They are only accessed by maintenance crew. They are not open to our tenants. So the doors that you do see are not public operated operation doors. So you cannot see a door opening with people accessing their stuff behind it. These are some of the materials that I went through, the difference of some lighter color cream, grayish stucco, some of the integral color split face block that we're proposing on the first floor in kind of an auburn-ish red color and a charcoal gray color. Our brick veneer that is in the second floor, our metal paneling and flashing for the fins and awnings, as well as the integral color for our loading door and integral colors for any exterior service doors with stairs and any other utility doors to match the integral color block. That was a really fast, brief overview of our project. I'm happy to spend further detail on any of these exhibits for any questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, any comments or questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
Michelle, is the drive aisle that rings the building, the driveway that rings the building, is that required by building code or fire department access? I was just, remarking about how much pavements is on the site that is really just for circulation, and it seems like maybe the southern leg or more could be eliminated without compromising the activity of the building itself.
That's a great question. We are proposing the full drive around just for the ease of circulation. For fire access, our building is fairly long, so we could eliminate the southern portion of the driveway south of the drive-through, because we obviously want to, maintain that one-way traffic through the drive-through. And we could look at doing a fire truck turnaround area in order to eliminate some of that pavement. So there are alternate ideas that we could look at that would still meet fire access requirements.
My if you wanted to look at that and it would reduce the pavement a fair amount, I would encourage that. But if it becomes more cumbersome than it's worth, then I would leave it as is.
Okay.
We start for that idea. Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
This is Commissioner Harb. I just wondered if you considered a green roof and or solar panels on the roof at all?
Not a green roof, but this developer does consider solar for all of their projects where it is feasible. So I think we're still doing some research on that, and if it works out, we will provide solar for the facility. And I do have another member of our team on the line, Jessie Ray. So if there's any other ownership questions that are made more in depth, she might be able to provide additional information for that.
Thank you. I second Commissioner Herbst's question. I had it on my list of things to ask, and I appreciate not having to always ask the solar question. So thank you. But I will ask, what about other sustainability features, such as, is your indoor lighting going to be all LED? And what about landscaping? Will you be using native plants?
Sure. Yes. Yes, we will always be using native plants on the property, salvage anything that is salvageable, and then obviously replace and add any landscaping to be in compliance with Middleton. For the interior of the property, it is fully sprinkler for some ideas in there. The lighting is all LED and occupancy censored lighting, so that if the area is not being occupied, we don't have all the lights on in the facility all day. Same thing with our water service to the facility. There is very limited water and sewer that is needed. Obviously, we have the fire sprinkler system, but our restrooms, we typically only have, for a two-story building, 2 restrooms. In the office, there is a small washer and dryer and a break room area and a mop sink, some service ins there, but the sewer and water service is significantly low as well. All of our glazing, all of our fixtures, they're all high into a green code standard that would low flow system.
Great.
And what about your HVAC system? How's that handled?
So the HVAC system is usually done in 5-10 units for our square footage. And we typically mount them on the roof so that they will be fully screened by our parapets. And again, trying to keep it down to smaller units by doing 5-10 units, because they are more efficient than a larger unit. The runs can be smaller throughout the facility, and the ambient temperature is kept in the facility. For Middleton, the temperature might change slightly based on the season, but usually we try to keep it in that 75-80 degree range. Again, that may fluctuate based on winter versus summer, but we do try to keep it at an ambient temperature.
All right. Any additional questions?
Do you expect this to be only leased as climate controlled storage, or will the developer allow additional uses? Would there be people having shops and studios here?
No, this will only be personal storage. No one is allowed to run a business out of their storage unit or occupy it as far as living in it. The electricity that is provided through the facility is purely maintenance electricity. It's mounted higher. It's only in the hallways and only at distances that are required to help with maintenance cleaning machines. So that helps reduce the temptation of running any sort of business out of your storage unit, but it's also strictly prohibited.
Right. Further questions or comments? I would like to note that our intern Rishika prepared the memo for this, so she's not here, but I appreciate her work. All right, would somebody like to, actually, Daphne, would you bring up the agenda so we can see the staff recommendation? I think it's on, there it is. All right, so would somebody like to make a motion to,
Commissioner, I'll make a motion. Looking for it now. We're recommending a design review approval, subject to comments from engineering staff.
No. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think,
Is that it?
yeah, I think since this is just the concept review
see.
stage, yeah,
I
there's
see. I'm
no,
sorry.
no need for approval.
My mistake.
So
Correct,
much
yes.
as just asking the applicant to address the comments.
Do we need to make a motion?
Do,
I don't think it's necessary.
okay, well then, can we all say that we concur with the staff recommendation that the applicant address the comments from engineering staff? And go on to the step of submitting documents for design review?
And any comments made here
Yes.
as well?
All right. Is that helpful? Do you have what you
Thank
need?
you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on to the next item. It's the design review for new building Future Foam at 2314 Parview Road. And I understand we have two people in the audience who, or actually three. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris Barber, here on behalf of Future Foam, with Advanced Building Corporation, with a general contractor for the project. Pete and I and his team have been working on this facility for, I think, 3 or 4 months now. Staff's seen the project. We've got a lot of comments from staff. We're confident we can work through 2 out of the 3 at least that were commented, the approval of stormwater management plan. We're on the stormwater plan or stormwater committee meeting, I think on 9/22 for that. We're confident we can get through that. All of the other staff comments were fairly minor. The one exception that we really like to discuss with you guys tonight is the approval of only having 1 access point to the facility. Pete Dow, who's the general manager of the facility, is also set to speak. I'll let him talk about the reasons why it's crucial to their overall operation, why we think it's not only crucial to their operations, but safer from a city street standpoint, safer from an overall facility standpoint, safer for the need as well. And then we'd also like to have a short discussion about landscaping points. We also have our architect here, Rob Core with Borrell Associates, and then we have our civil engineer online as well, Christy with KL Engineering. So we're here to answer any of the questions that you guys have. I'll let Pete give a little bit of background of the overall facility, what they do, how they're expanding, why they need this facility.
That was not working. All right. First of all, just a little bit about Future Foam. So I'm the general manager of the operation on 2210 Parview. We've been there since 1977. A lot of people don't know Future Foam. We're a manufacturer of polyurethane products, very vertically integrated. We recycle everything we use. Any leftover foams, we grind up and make carpet pads. So essentially we generate 0 garbage for the most part through our operation. What we do is we pour foam and we fabricate foam and we make carpet pad. And we've grown from 1977 out of the building that we've got on 2210 Parview. And we purchased the building about 8 or 10 years ago on 8430 Murphy Drive and expanded our fabrication operation into that facility. We are pretty much out of space. We want to continue to grow. We want to continue to stay in Middleton as an employer. We currently have about 150 employees, hourly employees. This facility that we're proposing at 2314 Parview, we would probably start with a first shift operation, have about 20 employees. Hopefully we would grow it into a two shift operation, end up with about 40 incremental jobs at the facility. Like Chris said, for the most part, I think talking with staff, we're pretty much aligned. The biggest sticking point, it's almost a no-go for us, and that's access. So essentially what you see here, we're only allowed one access point. The existing access point is on the north of the property right there. And the problem that we faced is combining the traffic of employees coming in and out and truck traffic. So this facility is designed essentially to have one access point in and one access point out. Now, again, we're only allowed one, and this sort of violates that. And I think the staff comments sort of speak to that. But essentially, if you look at the parking lot across the street by the library, it's the same way. There's one dedicated entrance and there's one dedicated exit. And so when we looked at this in terms of safety, not only for street safety, but as well as safety on the site, we don't want employees coming out an entrance where trucks are coming in and vice versa. So this plan has trucks coming in from the south, going out from the north. The truck traffic is isolated at the front of the facility, and then employees would essentially park in the back. So they'd come in along the south edge, park in the back, and then exit out the north lane. So I think our ask to the committee is to have some conversation around that. I think that's really critical for this plan in terms of the overall safety, not only coming in and off of the street, off of Parview, but also when we're operating vehicles on the site. So the other thing was the off-street parking ordinance requires 12 stalls to have a tree island. On the north side of the property, on the west side of the property, we really struggled with stormwater management. So there's two stormwater collection basins, one on the north, one on the south, on the western edge. And in order to get enough parking spaces to make the facility viable, we did not put a tree island on the back side of the property. It's not visible from the street. We certainly feel it's very fair ask given where the location is. It's certainly off the visible line of sight from Parkview Road. So I don't know, Chris, we talked a little bit about landscaping, the initial landscaping plan, and I don't know if that's in this document.
It's in there, it's in the back. I guess we're seeking you guys' comments on the point of access. We're asking for planning commission to. I guess the number one thing that we wanted comments from Plan Commission were on the 2 points of access. We're really asking the Plan Commission to override a city policy. I don't think city staff is necessarily against 2 points of access. They had just pointed out that it is the policy to have 1 point of access. I can also say that as you go through the park, and I know some of these facilities were put in place probably prior to this policy being in place. But there's very similar truck courts. If you look at Frank Beverage, right on Pleasant View Road, they have a very similar truck court. One entrance point, one exit point, along with, they have 3 other access points along there. So what we're doing, we think is fair and we think it's reasonable. Without it, with 1 point of access, it would cause the trucks to go around the whole entire facility. We're not sure that the project is feasible in its current nature with only 1 access point.
Hi, this is Emily. I have a clarifying question.
Go ahead.
The trucks, can you describe the trucks? Because, and I apologize, I may not have read the packet full enough. I'm assuming it's like an 18-wheeler or a very large truck. Can you talk just for 30 seconds? Tell me what kind of trucks we're dealing with traffic.
So what we're going to be dealing with is 53-foot dry van trailers, and we have yard trucks. They're basically Ottawa trucks, short. They're not the typical long tractors that you'd see. And what we're going to essentially do is we pour foam blocks, these blocks of foam up at 2310 Parkview. The blocks cured. This will be a fabrication location where we'll cut those blocks into parts. So essentially, we'll load trailers, we'll shuttle them down to the south docks, we'll unload them, we'll fabricate, and then on the outbound docks, we'll have, there's 6 outbound docks on the north side of the property that we will basically be shuttling finished goods out. So 53-foot dry van trailers. That's what we'll have.
I appreciate that. I've worked at production facilities before in my younger days, and I can tell you it was hard sharing a driveway when the trucks were coming and going. So I appreciate you asking this question, and I hope that we will consider it, especially since nearby companies do the same.
And if I could make one more comment, staff had recommended coming up with a shared driveway agreement to Advertisers Press, which is the property to the south. And what they've got is they've got mostly employee parking coming in and out. And we felt, so they've got a lot of employees. So if we had a shared driveway there, the concern would be their employees and their trucks need to go out. What we're trying to create a one-way in, one-way out to try to really improve the safety of traffic flow when you've got trucks and cars competing or utilizing the same lane.
And I will add that I met with this project group with one of our public works engineers just earlier this morning, and they didn't necessarily have an issue with the 2 access points either from, the engineering standpoint. But since it is a policy, it's up to the plan commission to, either decide to override it or stick with the policy. So that is in your jurisdiction tonight to decide whether or not we allow that second access.
So just to clarify, we don't need a variance.
No, yeah, since it's just a policy, it's not like an ordinance or anything. So it's in the plan commission's purview.
Is it written anywhere?
Yes, it's in our access management policy, which is found online.
And I'm thinking, to what type of, where does it apply? In what zones? Because I'm thinking of Dogtopia has an in and out.
Yeah, so I believe our access management policy is for just like every property in the city of Middleton. So I can see how that, policy in itself is more geared towards like, I don't know, a commercial space. We don't want to have too many, drive-throughs going in and out of, each and every different store or strip mall, something like that. And then since this is in an industrial area, the lots are way bigger. And, obviously dealing with a lot more truck traffic. So it is just like a blanket policy for the entire city.
I think one other comment, Rob was going to address that fire department access. They typically would like 2 points of access as well.
I'm Rob LaCour. I'm representing Boral Design Associates. We're the architect on the project. To get a little bit technical, one of the key issues we have with this site is fire department access. The blocks of foam that are being stored and fabricated in this facility are not hazardous, but they are what the fire department will classify as high hazard. Really what that means is if it starts to burn and for some reason the sprinkler system can't cope with it, the fire department needs really good access to perform their operations. It made, complete sense to keep the north access point. That's where the existing cut is. It's perfectly placed. We really want a south access point for fire department operations because the majority of the bulk storage of this product is on the south end of the building. So the fire department access is required all the way around the building regardless, but giving them not just future foam, but the fire department an access point to the south and a straight shot down that southern fire lane to access the southern part, that southern side of the building I'm not a firefighter, I can't say critical, but a big consideration in the design process. So I would encourage you to think about that. It's not just the future foam operation, but fire department access and fire department operations would benefit greatly from that southern access point as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Comments, questions from commissioners or the mayor? I wondered about the tree islands. What's the concern about including, what is it, 1 per 12? parking
I think it was
spaces?
more, we were trying to maximize the amount of spaces that we had for employee parkings. There's a substantial amount of landscaping above and beyond the city required points. I think the city required points are 715 or something, round numbers. I think we have 1,600 points included in this current plan. We were actually hoping to have a little bit of relief from some of the plantings that are going to be difficult to maintain on the north and the south of the building that aren't visible from the city street, from Parview. But I guess that's a secondary topic, and I thought that could be probably worked out through staff review as we go along. But the main point was the second point of access.
Wouldn't a tree island provide some shade for some people to park under?
There's actually, if you look at the landscape plan, if we can pull that back up, there's several trees. Yeah, there's several shade trees shown on the western portion of the property. You know, and that's right along the railroad tracks. So there will be some shade, and that's probably, again, above and beyond what would be expected in a tree island.
And the other piece out there, this is Christy with KL.
Yes.
The other piece there is trying to get, we're not meeting all of our stormwater requirements. And by putting that tree island in, we're making those stormwater ponds on that west side of the building even smaller. So, I mean, that was kind of the other design factor piece. I mean, yes, it's only 9-10 feet, but that's another 9-10 feet of stormwater treatment we were able to get while still providing the amount of parking that, you know, Future Foam is saying this is what we need for how many people we're going to have per shift. And, you know, we need to provide stalls for everybody. So that was kind of the other piece too, was trying to get as much stormwater as we could and show that good faith effort to provide as much stormwater treatment as we can on a site that has difficult soils and other high groundwater restraints that we were dealing with out there.
Sure, Bruce.
Yeah, I just, I'm a big believer in tree islands. I think that they provide a lot of value would provide a lot of value to your employees and just in general terms, cooling the asphalt. But in this particular case, with the amount of truck trailer parking and asphalt that we have out front without any kind of softening available to us there, it seems a little bit hypocritical to require it in this particular case. I wouldn't want that to become a standard anywhere else, but in this particular case, I'd be okay with losing the tree island. I think that the landscaping plan looks great. I really appreciate what you're doing up front along the street, and then along the west property line. I'm less concerned with what happens adjacent to the building on the north and south faces, but I'll leave that up to staff to work out with the applicant.
Thank you. Other comments or questions?
Does Aaron have something to say? Don't you have a landscape background?
No, I don't.
Sorry. Oh, never mind. Well, do you have something to say anyway?
I was just going to comment on the 2 access points. I think your due diligence and circling your plan around that, both for the safety with the fire access and the safety of your employees, is, you know, a reason to approve the exception in this case. So
I agree. And the shade trees that are existing on the west side are going to do the job of shading the parking spaces east of them. And the building to the east will shade the parking spaces in the morning. So it feels like a tree island on the west side of the building would be irrelevant for the purpose and actually take away from the stormwater management. So I agree with both of the requests.
I had a couple of questions. On page 40 of the packet, there's a reference to forklift parking and charging area, and I was wondering what's being charged there.
Those are the battery operated forklifts.
Great. What about sustainability features? You were here, we asked about solar, LED lighting. It looks like your neighbor to the south from one of these images, looks like they're very much on board with solar.
Yeah, we definitely have all LED lighting in the facility, so low power consumption there. We have some cross ventilation coming through the facility to cool it rather than, HVAC to do that job. So no air conditioning in the facility other than in the offices. We have not really considered solar on this facility.
Would it be possible for you to just be able to at least design the building to accommodate solar panels in the future? If someone wants to do that in the future, if it becomes, economically important or.
Yeah, the building itself has a 5-pound collateral load on it, which means we've loaded the building for some mechanical loading to sit on it. Solar panels, and their lightest are probably 2 pounds a square foot. So there's probably excess capacity to put solar panels in a flat array on the rooftop, especially as they get lighter and easier to mount to standing seam roofs.
Well, as you may know, Middleton has a goal of getting 100% of its energy from clean renewable sources by the year 2050, and we may need to back that up to 2040. So we rely on everybody contributing to that. So if there's any way to add solar in the future, that would be fantastic and would help us achieve our goal. Also on page 40, it looks like the area of the men's bathroom is almost 50% more than the women's bathroom. Is that standard?
The number of fixtures are calculated based on the total number of employees. So there are enough there for the females and males per code. The additional fixtures for the males is based on the fact that the vast majority of employees are typically male, and we need to cycle them through that facility a little bit more expeditiously. So code-wise, we're covered for the number of fixtures for both genders. And because there'll be more males, we provide some additional fixtures for them.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, who would like to make a motion? It seems like Daphne, if you bring up the agenda. Commissioners, are we in agreement that we're willing to override the one access point policy? Any objections to that? Okay, so taking out the second contingency, I had a question about resolution of engineering staff comments. Do we need to specify with the exception of the tree islands and the access point?
Yeah, if you could do that as well.
Okay. All right, so that's what the motion will look like. Who would like to move approval? I can state them. I'll state the motion if that helps.
There we go.
Okay, so we're looking for someone to move approval of the design review contingent upon approval of the stormwater management plan and resolution of engineering staff comments with the exception of the tree islands and the single access point.
Erdman Hermans will move approval of the beautifully stated recommendation.
Summers will second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone.
All right. I note we have some people in the audience, and to my knowledge, we don't have a public comment period. Am I correct, staff?
That's correct.
Okay, so I don't want anyone to have an expectation that there will be public comments. Just letting you know because this could be a long meeting. All right, moving on to the next item, which is the request for design review revisions for CXC Outdoor Sports and Recreation Facility at 4355 Schwartz Road.
And Alder Hanira, we have Yuri, Natalie, and Dan Erdman, and then also Kylie Scherer. She is on the Zoom, and so they're all available to speak and on this item.
All right. And staff, can you give us a little intro to this topic, please?
I can, yes. So we have a unique arrangement here with the Central Cross Country Ski Facility that's been developed in the city on Schwartz Road. And it's really a partnership between the Erdman family who own the land and have donated a portion of the land to accommodate the facility. Yuri and his Central Cross Country Ski Association and the city of Middleton, both through our Parks and Recreation Department with Kylie being our lead staff person, and also our tourism department who has invested in the facility as well. The Plan Commission had previously approved some design review changes to the property, and that included an event tent. And over the course of the project, as things have changed on the site, the applicant has found a need to also locate a temporary dome on site, which is to be used to rent ski equipment. And when our Parks and Recreation Department found out about the dome, they had concerns because they felt that it limited access for parking for other facilities, including the bike park that's nearly completed, the pump track on site. So there was a meeting, and I know one of the concerns in particular was making sure that we had enough ADA compliant stalls to meet the code requirements. And to provide access to residents who are wanting to use the facility. And so Yuri has brought forward 3 options for consideration. Option A, B, and C are all labeled on the screen here. And I know that our Parks and Rec department is also proposing an alternative option, which would be where Daphne is kind of showing here, which would be located immediately off of the paved parking area and wouldn't interfere with any of the existing parking to my knowledge. So I think that our recommendation is for area D or area B. And I think at this point, I'd just like to see if our Parks and Recreation Director, Kylie, would like to make any additional remarks.
Kylie, just one second. May I ask, so area D is not labeled, it's where the hand is, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And do you think there's enough space to put the tent or the dome? It doesn't look to me like A, B, or C would fit in that space, but I could be wrong.
Kylie, can you speak to that?
Yes, I was trying to find alternative locations. We, over the winter season, we do get several phone calls and emails about parking, just being available for everyone utilizing the cross-country ski trails. So I know that there is a priority there, to make access for all users, and then also with it blocking up ADA compliant stalls and that being an issue, I just wanted to bring that forward. We are working on that pump track that's going to be completed coming up here, and I know there are a lot of moving pieces to this puzzle and a lot of users for the space, but we want to amplify the parking spaces for this space that's shown on your screen here. We had noted, or I had worked with park staff to take a look at the grading, and this was the lowest grade if we did have to make any changes for moving the structure and being right off of the pavement. They would, with the ramp of the dome structure, it would provide access. And I know the CXC Foundation or CXC had brought up just having ADA compliancy access to the dome. If they needed to access through the ramp, it would be, if it was located off pavement, that would just help. And this was another location, but trying to appease a lot of moving parts here. So that's what I have for right now, but I can answer any other further questions on this. So
Commissioners?
I see Dan and Natalie Erdman here. Did you have any comments that you wanted to provide the commission?
I think maybe Yuri would be.
Or Yuri? Yeah.
Thank you all. And just a few comments. I mean, parking is essential. I mean, we've been at the facility now operating for 2 years, and the first year was 16 spots. Last year we had 48, and we're able successfully to manage with the overflow parking. We had just on the side of the access drive up to probably close to 200 vehicles. But I think the important piece is that importance of the parking was also essential, that we requested last summer, the city to allocate the funds that were set specifically for improvement of cross-country ski trails into the parking lot. So those funds were allocated to the trail. Now we need to raise the money to grade the trail. So that's one piece. I think in other pieces, I mean, we have 1,500 for the last 2 years, pretty much 1,500 trail pass holders, 23 of them wheelchair users. I mean, that's the reason where the dome is right now, is so we can provide accessibility to those individuals to come inside and adjust equipment if the weather conditions are cold or windy, if they just need to get inside. I mean, that's a concern, in addition of having a rental of equipment, which last year with very limited snow, this was the only place in southern Wisconsin people could actually rent equipment. And our kind of urgency to have the dome was to serve the public. That was the #1 priority for us because of the request we received 2 years ago from the public as well. With the bike park, again, as I mentioned, we pretty much at the site, somebody at the site almost every day for mowing, I mean, it's our facility we operate pretty much year round. And so far, really, with a biking, we've seen the most, probably 12 vehicles. And just also to mention, from the beginning, the bike park, when it was designed, the design was for 16 parking lots. And that's why in our lease agreement with the city, 16 initial parking that was constructed, and we paid for construction of those 16 spots, including access drive, was specifically designed for the bike park, 16 spots. Even when it was designed off the golf course, it was 16 spots. That's why it kind of was moved in the lease agreement with the 16 spots. I also spoke with briefly with the designer of the pump track, just to understand what the capacity of the pump track is. So their best estimate is that at the most, there will be 20 riders can use that pump track at the same time. There may be a few others just waiting to get on the pump track, but it's a very unique facility that requires, if you see it, it requires very specific skills. Not everybody can just jump on a bike and use it. So even if we double it on the busiest time, it's going to be 40 people at the most. So there's still, I believe, again, just from our experience, will be more than adequate parking available. And, you know, my other concern is we are meeting tomorrow with the contractor. We're hoping to start construction of the trailhead building as soon as we can. And if that proposed location, A, B, C, D, that would be right where the turnaround will be for the vehicles, for the construction vehicles to come in and to come out of the property as well. And really, if parking is needed, I think that blue line, you can see that's what we used. It's east section of the access drive. So that's what is used in the winter for overflow parking. So there's probably about anywhere between 30 to 40 vehicles are able to park, even in the winter when there is snow on the side. And the traffic, it's not impacting the traffic on the access drive. So there's plenty adequate parking, at least from my experience seeing an operating facility for the last 2 years. And also really between those two parking spots, two parking lots, parking 1 and parking B, those areas where the tent could be, we can plow and designate that space as an overflow parking as well, instead of moving facilities. And I mean, we're a nonprofit organization. A lot of stuff is done by volunteer. I mean, most of it is done by volunteer labor. So it's justifying time of people that we rely on for grooming trails and maintenance of the trails also is important to us. So that area, if needed, that area between two parking spots on the both sides could be used as overflow parking if needed. And we used that for the event we had last winter. And we had, I think, close to 300 vehicles. We had to actually rent parking from the golf course as well to accommodate everybody. That's all I have. Again, we appreciate the partnership. It's been a huge success so far, and we're looking forward to continue to grow number of visitors at the center.
Thank you. Any questions from commissioners?
This is Emily. Can we go over the options again real quick? I know you said something about B and D.
Would you like me to go over the
Staff, can you
options?
walk us?
So option A is where it is right now, right in that corner of the parking lot. Yeah, right there. Option B, that would be another area which will make it absolutely inaccessible for wheelchair users. And then option C, it's kind of like in the middle of the parking lot. It will take up almost the same amount of spots as option A, but it will move it away. The biggest, another concern, again, it's being out of the way from the construction if it starts this fall. I mean, whether this fall or early next spring, our intent is really to have that dome tent just for the winter time. And I mean, we definitely in a good fundraising position right now to have the first phase of the trailhead building starting at the latest next spring. So by the next winter, we hope to have the building.
Chair.
Yes.
Would it be feasible to move it to area D, which was the staff proposal? Given that we're so late in the fall at this point, that construction seems unlikely this year, and then it could be moved prior to construction in the spring, or what is involved with moving it, I guess?
Well, again, it's going to take 8 to 10 people a week to take it down, 8 to 10 people a week to put it back up. I mean, is that really necessary to use volunteers' time instead of actually do the work on the trails, which is, I mean, that grows like a jungle every week and trees falling, and we need to get ready to prep now for the ski season. So it's an effort. Again, is that the most valuable way to spend volunteers' time?
And if we had staff, I would volunteer my staff team to support if necessary.
Commissioner Urban Herman's.
I had a question. I'm not familiar with the land elevation there, but between lots 1 and 2 on the south side, could it be feasible to put the tent there?
No, not with the elevation grade on that side.
Okay.
There, yeah.
So this photo I'm showing on the screen right now, this is, in between parking 1 and 2. And then you can kind of see the white lines where Kylie had her staff kind of spray paint where the dome could sit. So this is showing where area D is on that map. And then, yeah, you can see on the south side, it kind of slopes upward, so it's not level.
Yuri, it sounds to me like the real obstacle is just manpower and getting it moved. It's not necessarily that you have a real objection to this location.
Yeah, manpower and necessity. I just don't, again, from my experience, what we've seen so far, I believe there's adequate parking. And it's not built yet, obviously, so maybe we need a little time just to see what actually the demand will be on the parking once the pump track is done. But again, we have the capacity is in addition to the access overflow parking we use at the access drive, along the access drive. I mean, it could be parked over 100 vehicles.
So the tent or the dome is already up.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying. Because I'm looking at the memo and I'm not seeing anything about I'm seeing 3 reasons why it should stay at A, and manpower or the burden on volunteers isn't listed among those. So that's new information. I'm wondering why Kylie has offered assistance from staff and possibly other volunteers as available. Can we go back to the map? Why not use, because I think the area that we're calling D just doesn't look like it would be big enough if this is to scale. Well, what about that overflow parking space? I mean, if parking is the issue, we don't want to, or an issue, and we don't want to take up parking from the lot, why not move it to in there?
That's gravel right now. So what we did last fall after the construction of the access drive, there was big pile of gravel left over. And we asked contractor to kind of flatten it because we need that gravel to use for the construction of the building and all other bus turnaround. So that gravel will be the first thing that will be used if construction begins.
Okay.
What's wrong with A? I mean, it worked last year, right?
It worked just fine, yeah.
And there's enough parking and it's near 3 handicap spots.
Okay.
A is covering up the handicap parking that, and this isn't all the way to scale how it's set up right now. A lot of the gravel is actually behind the overflow parking lot as well. And then there aren't 2 handicaps parking spots there. There's a handicaps parking spot where A is right on top of it. And then there's a handicap, and all of those spaces across cannot be used because there's not ability for maneuvering a vehicle into that space. Where that trail kind of ends is where the new amenity for that facility is going to be located. So just having that entrance be not very welcoming on how it's set up. Currently, it was another point of why we wanted to take a look at moving the structure to a better location. There is quite a bit of land up there, and I think that a solution can be found that it would be moved that wouldn't interfere with parking on the lot, and then it wouldn't interfere with the entrance to our facility or ADA compliancy.
And Kylie, did I hear you suggest that you could offer up some staff manpower?
Yeah, if it would be like for grading, or we could work on coordinating, I would be willing to figure that out. I know that we're trying to work together as a team, and I know this is a big job for volunteers. So having staff assist in moving the structure, I would be willing to take a look at that.
So
This is Emily. I would volunteer to help move something too. I not be helpful, highly in their time, then I will too. And maybe we can move forward. So I'm excited for this.
Okay, so it seems like A is not an option. B does not look like an option. That leaves C, which in the memo, and who wrote the memo that we have? Was that staff or the applicant?
This was prepared by the applicant.
Okay.
I think C is very similar kind of situation. It's not, I mean, if you're moving it down the parking lot, I don't know, why would you put all that staff time in to move it down the parking lot? But it does open up a few of those other issues of ADA compliancy or access into the other facility. So it is more favorable than A, but I don't see any reason why we can't take a look at moving it to spot D.
And Kylie, can I ask, when you went out and spray painted with staff and everything, is that to the exact measurement of the actual dome now? Because that seems to be a major point of confusion here as to whether that will actually fit on site D.
Yeah, we did measure out, it's approximately 35 by 35, and we went a little bit over just to make sure if you didn't want to have it abutted to the right up to the asphalt, just for a little bit of room. And the grading on that corner where it's painted would be about a foot down for grading, or there are a lot of concrete blocks that's currently resting on of maneuvering or placing that on the opposite end to make sure it's level.
So other than the manpower and the grading, does the applicant have any concerns with site D?
The biggest concern, if we start construction, then we move it again back in the same spot. And again, it's a week to take it down, a week to put it back up. So it's 2 weeks just for the process. The bike season maybe will last another 8 weeks. And the main use is really on the weekend now with kids at school and people getting, it's going to be dark by the time anybody get there. So if we're really looking at number of days that actually it would be usable close to capacity. I understand it's not the ideal spot for visibility, for access, but at the same time, my concern, yeah, if we do go in construction, for my preference to start that construction as soon as possible. And again, I mentioned we're meeting with architect and contractor tomorrow.
And I think just bringing that to your construction meeting and having that discussion and of working around, I know there's several construction projects that we work in the city and working around those elements and trying to be as thoughtful on time and that as possible. So I'd be willing to help out if with those conversations if wanted on your end, Yuri.
Thank you.
I have one other suggestion you might want to consider as an option. If you were to leave it in spot A and create some more handicap spaces, just repaint the spaces that you want to get more ADA spaces adjacent to it, maybe that would solve part of the issue.
And that's what we outlined in yellow.
Okay.
And last year, when we only had 16 spots, we just had a signage. We had 2 signs for handicap accessible parking. And people respected those spaces and we didn't have an issue. I mean, the issue was just because we had 1,600 spots, but people did not park in the areas where we had the signage.
I have a question for
Wait,
staff.
May I ask Kylie to address that? Kylie?
Mm-hmm.
What about the option of just adding handicap spaces as shown in yellow on the map?
That is a question for you all to answer if that is okay. I know that we need to ensure we're following ordinance and having handicap spots. I think that there is an opportunity to move it to another location, so I didn't favor this one as staff and for the entrance of the pump track facility, but and having that very viewable. So when they come up, but I think that is up to you as the commissioners.
The amount of ADA spots that are required, is that for when the building is built, or is that for now as the park?
It's for Daphne, I think you could answer this too.
Yeah, it's for the number of parking spaces available. So, I believe it is 3 or 4 for this many number of parking spaces. And so, yeah, we just, that's federal law. So we have to stick with that. And then it's also based off of, the location of the spots have to be closest to the facilities that are there. So currently the pump track is, I believe, opening soon or already opened. And so this is basically the only facility on the location right now. So having ADA accessibility as close as possible to the pump track is really important.
So is one possible solution to relocate the handicap stalls as shown in this presentation here, get through this winter since the bike season is almost at a close, get through this winter, see how everything operates, see if the construction is able to get started, and then make a decision as to where to move it in the future? I mean, is that a realistic option for us?
And my recommendation on that is if we get through this winter and it is set up on option A, and we do add in handicap parking stalls, additional ones, then to have it taken down or moved at the end of their season, which would be in 2024.
Planning to take it down at the end of the ski season.
Yes.
Just wanted to add one thing. In addition to restriping, they would be required under our handicap parking ordinance requirements. They would also need to post a sign.
The handicap signs?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable impinging the access to the building site at this point in the fall, especially since you haven't had the meeting. And it seems like if people know where the tent is from last year, they'll already be looking for it there this year. They know how to access the trail from that spot. Just from a user standpoint, it makes sense to maybe keep it where it is or where it was for this temporary season and readjust parking as needed.
I understand that option, and it does seem to make sense. I'm inclined to support the staff recommendation because I know, Kylie's thinking about the big picture and the new pump track, even though it seems like we're getting close to the end of bike season. I would be inclined to support the staff's recommendation to go with the park or area D, but it's up to the commission as a whole. So would anybody, noting the time, would anybody be interested in making a motion?
Commissioner Bruce will make a motion that we approve the revision with additional handicap parking adjacent to area A, that the dome tent would be in place through this winter season, but taken down at the end of the winter season, and that all the required striping and handicap signage be installed.
Urban Herman second.
Okay, so the elements are approving the additional handicap parking, taking the structure down at the end of the season or the end of winter, did you say?
End of the ski season.
End of the ski season, thank you. And signage. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Well, I will oppose. All right, the ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to our last item, the zoning ordinance rewrite, draft zoning map and upcoming meetings and open houses. Staff. Oh.
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, yeah. That's not debatable. Well, while we're waiting for Mark, I'll just note that we will have feedback from other committees at our September 26th meeting. And tonight, when Abby and Mark return, they're seeking feedback and guidance on open houses and on improving the map.
Sorry about that. So in your packet is a memo that summarizes the work we did in preparing for the draft zoning map. I guess I'll start by just touching on a few things. One is how we approach the zoning classifications and the map in particular. If you could just go to the map, please, Daphne. So we started with the idea that all existing zoning districts that are PDD will remain unchanged. The rest will have a change in zoning classification. The future land use map in the city's comprehensive plan on page 23 influenced how we would designate these zoning districts as well. And then we also took into account lot dimensions, specifically size and width, which influence the placement of, or the designation of, single family lots, low, medium, and high density, as well as the two-family flats and duplex arrangement, for example, on Parmenter Street. There's a fourth principle that we also took into consideration. We felt that along the highway corridors, Highway 14 and Highway 12 in particular, those are two US highways, that we assigned or are proposing the research park designation, which in part to discourage housing, which comes with urban mixed use, is a possibility of urban mixed use, but that would be promoting offices, personal professional services, indoor institutional, which of course includes hospital, medical services. So that would be consistent with what we've been planning at the corner of southeast corner of Highway 12 and Century Avenue. Much of this area that I just mentioned is currently zoned B3. And I did check to see what the uses are in B3, and many of those uses would still be accommodated by Research Park, although some of them would require a conditional use. So that it does raise a potential question of, we just want to make sure that people are aware that that's a change in zoning that still gives them a wide range of uses that are very desirable uses. It's a very prominent corridor for the city, both Highway 12 and 14. So I just wanted to call your attention to the fact that that's a change in zoning, but with a lot of a wide range of uses still allowed in that corridor. Just, we didn't want to see housing, or didn't want to encourage housing there. Also in your memo on the back page is a table or basically 36 items that are properties or general areas that we decided to highlight just in case there were questions about the rationale. And rather than going through each of them, I guess I would turn it over at this time for any questions you have.
Thank you. Questions, comments? I noted there's a lot of lavender. And I'm wondering, the code is moving us away from PDDs. So what happens when an area that's going to be zoned PDD decides to change, to do something? Will they be amending their PDD PDDG or S?
So I'm glad you asked
Zoning or-
that. I meant to touch on that. Thank you. So number 2 is the airport property. That is a sole owner. It is zoned PDD. The city is the owner of the airport. And so it is a lot easier for one property owner to consent to a change in zoning designation. And so I am double checking with our city attorney. I haven't heard back yet, but just to make sure that we can use this process to assign the airport zoning district. I don't see any reason why that, I mean, that's the whole reason why that zoning district was written. There are a couple others. There are quite a few other actually PDDs that pertain to only one property. And what we would like to do is, instead of reaching out to those property owners now, that is a step we can take over the winter or in the future. It doesn't have to be this winter, but we would like to reach out to single property owners and present to them how the ordinance specifically addresses what we would propose is the zoning district for their site. And we would have to go through a rezoning process then. And I would imagine that the city would, I mean, not imagine, I would recommend that the city would obviously absorb that application fee process. It would be very difficult for a neighborhood like Hidden Oaks or Misty Valley, Middleton Ridge, Middleton Hills. It's going to be difficult when there are dozens or hundreds of properties that are zoned PDD to rezone those out of PDD. So that is not something, that's why we're not planning to make any changes to those at this time. But as Abby has often said, we have so many PDDs. We have a lot of lavender, as you noted, Chair Hanairo. And so we are trying to make everyone's lives simpler by modifying and overhauling the zoning ordinance so that we have less reliance on PDDs going forward.
And so a development like Red Tail Ridge or Bell Farm, when they get into phase 2, will that be PDD?
Yes. So you'll recall that for a couple, maybe even 3 recent applications for multifamily housing, we've actually asked the developers to consent as part of the approval process with the GIP approval to consent to future rezoning. So site number 32, which is Middleton Shores, where that Daphne's highlighting, that reflects the condition of one of the contingencies of approval to have that be designated as multifamily zoning, high density in that case, pertaining only to the area that was identified for the 7-story structure. The balance of that would remain PDD. I would foresee that a future in that specific case, and I don't want to get into specific properties because we didn't notice this for specific properties. I mean, I don't want to go into details, but in that case, as an example, we would have, they would have to go through a GIP amendment process to do anything further with that property. And as part of that discussion, we would then reassign them to a new zoning classification. Castle Rock is another example. Regarding Red Tail Ridge to the north, we did not discuss with them, or haven't in the past, as approval, a condition of approval, we did not make any contingency of approval that there would be certain zoning classifications. But as Daphne and I and Abby have been looking at the zoning regulations, especially for the single family, I've worked with the applicant to, I've referred them to our proposed code to see if we can get them in line so that we have all the future zoning, all the future residential components, the single family in particular, that can be assigned one of our zoning classifications going forward.
Other questions, comments?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions, I guess. One, I see some of the lighter brown properties. I think they're R3A properties probably. We've assigned, similar densities to what's existing. But, I wonder if we're not restricting the use or the densities of those properties to their existing densities when the comp plan would support a much higher density, I think. And would it make sense for us to choose densities that would be more in line with the comp plan would suggest rather than what's there now? And I don't know what that means to the property owners. I mean, and I know you guys have done a lot of thinking about that, But that was just something that came to me when I was looking at the map.
So Commissioner Bruce, the multifamily, the R3A designation that is widely used today caps buildings. Well, it's a bit trickier than that, but in general, the highest multifamily buildings are 35 feet under our current ordinance. What we have done with the proposed ordinance is identified 4 categories of multifamily. And frankly, I'm been toying with the idea of consolidating that to 3 stories or recommending that, but I don't want to get into that tonight. It's much easier to reduce the number of zoning districts than it is to add something. So we've been trying to, our approach with this ordinance has been to go into it and use the template that Vanderbilt has worked on with other communities around the state. And they do have a lot of Wisconsin experience, which is one of the reasons why we selected them. But to have community like ours have a menu of choices that we can tailor to our community, and if necessary, scale back. It's a lot easier to do that than it is to expand. So the multifamily category there's 4: low, medium, urban, and high. The low density is our current standard of 35 feet. Medium builds on that. And I believe median is a maximum building height is 4 stories. And then urban and high have a higher allowance. And then they also have a conditional use to 5 stories. And then they have a conditional use process that allows even higher. So our comprehensive plan, our future land use map identified has 2 land use categories that allow a conditional use, or where it identifies a conditional use process for exceeding 5 stories. One of those categories is multifamily. And we don't have our future land use map up, but what I did want to point out is that the map that our staff made, and I want to especially recognize Daphne and Rashika, planning intern, for their work on this map, because it really turned out well. And this is available online now, and you can click on any parcel, and this is open to the public already. You can click on any parcel and you can see the current zoning, R3A in this case, proposed zoning, which would be multifamily, low density, and then the future land use is the comp plan reference to the map, and then there's a link to DCI map. So wherever, I guess to get back to your question, sorry to sort of use that as an opportunity to elaborate a bit, but we are focusing our density along our arterials, which is consistent with our comp plan, arterial streets, which is of course where we have enhanced transit service. So I'm not sure what else to.
So what I guess I'm asking is, like, the property that you've got highlighted right there now is designated as low density, multifamily low density.
Right.
But in my mind, could support higher densities based on its location along one of the arterials. And there's a few of those, surrounding.
I see your question.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just wondering whether we're doing a disservice to the existing property owners, to future plan commissions, in restricting that property, restricting it to the densities that are there now, which are really 30 or 40-year-old densities.
Yeah, that's a very valid question. And that's why we are here tonight, is to get your feedback.
Yeah, I agree, because the density that it has now is accommodated by the higher density designations that we have in the new code, correct? So.
Right. So I think so what we're showing in the case of Arbor Lakes is largely what's in place today, recognizing that there's many buildings there. The form of the building is a 2-story building.
Yeah.
It would allow a 3-story building under the code. Obviously, somebody could request, an applicant could come in and request a rezoning. Are you suggesting, Commissioner Bruce, that maybe we out of the gate go with a higher density?
I guess I would think that we should at least consider that.
Yeah.
I see that there's some problems with that, but I think that we should at least consider establishing densities that we really are preferring, not densities that are there now, and that require rezoning and public hearings. And
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
at least allowing for it. So maybe your idea of reducing the amount of zoning structures that allow more flexibility within each zoning, like could medium and low be combined, that you could have between a 2 and a 4-story building. That we don't require it to be a max of 2 or require it to be a minimum of 2. Have more flexibility in those areas.
I would support that.
Just an idea.
Well, I'm sorry, and then there's the whole issue too of mixed use development and where we wanted to try and encourage that. We obviously are well aware of what the pandemic has done in terms of accelerating society's reliance on online shopping and less and telework, working from home. So what we're seeing across the country in Madison area, Middleton is no different, is that it's getting harder to fill office buildings and to promote mixed use in some structures. So we also are aware of that trend, but we all here recognize as embodied in our comprehensive plan that mixed use is something we really want to promote and continue to promote and encourage. Because of the pedestrian scale and the transit aspect to it. So it's a balance. And that's why this is our first shot with staff taking, looking at our new code and having a pretty multi-hour process over several days going through this, but it was a lot of fun too. But we also didn't want to be too radical. So we wanted to, we felt like our charge was to look at the comp plan and look at these guiding principles and basically have a translation from what's there today to what, how the new code would fit, and then let you give us the guidance too.
Yeah, I think you've done a phenomenal job. Just getting it to this point is amazing. I can't imagine the amount of work that it took to get it here. And I really appreciate what staff's done. It's going to make everybody's life, including the existing property owners, it's going to make everybody's life easier moving forward. So I think it's great. One other kind of comment that I had to do with the mixed use neighborhood and mixed use avenue districts, because we have a lot of mixed use avenue, which in most every case I think is appropriate. That we're really going to allow 5-story structures on those. Plus, I think a 1-story addition for affordable housing or sustainability features or something like that. That's my understanding, which I think is fairly aggressive. I'm comfortable with it. It'll be interesting to see what the public says about all that. But the only alternative mixed use district that we have that is really for housing is the mixed use neighborhood. And it's quite a drop down in terms of what is allowed. It's limited to 3 stories. Apartments are even a conditional use, not a permitted use. And I'm wondering if either we need another mixed use district that's in between the two, or if we needed to look at beefing up the mixed use neighborhood district.
You mentioned that specifically housing in mixed use neighborhood. Is that what you mentioned?
Yes, that's
because that's also allowed in the other mixed use districts. So I didn't follow your comment there.
Is it allowed in the mixed use urban?
Yes.
When I looked at the uses, I didn't see it in the chart that it was allowed.
Well, mixed use buildings and live work units are specifically identified. The word apartments is not specifically listed, but a mixed use building is. I guess I would not want to get too much into the details of the zoning text because that's not before you tonight.
Okay.
Even though they're obviously related, but I don't want to get too much into the weeds with that.
I just took the mixed use urban as really primarily for office space.
Right.
And whereas the mixed use avenue, mixed use neighborhood are more residential in function, I think, certainly in intent. So I guess, and since we see so much of that coming forward to us now, I think that's going to be something that's going to be, we're going to be facing soon, very soon. So I wanted to just look at that.
The mixed-use building is an example of a mixed-use building shall consist of a minimum of 33% of gross floor area of the building shall be a non-residential use. But the rest of it it's silent on what the rest of that use could be. And that's part of the reason why we're liking this code, because it provides more flexibility. So we're not telling people exactly what we want here. We're entertaining options, but what we do want in a mixed use building is to have a mixed use component on the ground level. The rest of it is, we actually are pretty quiet on what.
But Mark, I think Randy just pointed out a mistake though, in our chart, which I have on the screen. It doesn't show any of our residential uses being permitted under MU.
Oh, I see.
So I think that is just a typo that we need to correct. But thank you for pointing it out, because that's very important.
Oh yeah, that is a mistake. Thank you. I spend quite a bit of time every day on this, and I'm always finding little things here and there. Yeah, we will note that.
So let's just talk about if we have a site that is on a thoroughfare that what if we're not comfortable with a 5-story designation or 5 to 6 story designation in those locations because it's surrounded by single family housing on all sides? Then what are our options?
Well, that's why we went into this, frankly, a bit conservatively. If you can go to University Avenue corridor. Well, actually, this is a fine corridor too. Well, let's go to University. It's easier because this one's all over the place. So what we're showing here on any one of these is mixed use avenue. And mixed use avenue allows minimum height of 2 stories. So it's a minimum, can't be a 1-story. Maximum height of 5 stories. Where we felt that 5 stories was too much or might be too much, that's where we went with the mixed use neighborhood approach. So for example, Parmenter Street by Paul's are a few lots there that the lots are small and it's a smaller scale. The Cardinal across the street is a 2-story multifamily building. Conservancy Bend went in and that was I think that's 4 stories. But we also knew that the site is really tight in that case. And the rest of the corridor to the south it has small lots. And so we felt that the juxtaposition of a taller building there might not be as conducive. So that's why we went with mixed use neighborhoods. So we're using zoning as a way to regulate the height. We also, one of the other, actually a good example, let's go north on Parmenter Street. This is a great example. So you'll notice the deeper salmon color, whatever that is, exactly where the arrow is. That in the future land use plan identified urban mixed use category. But in the way the zoning ordinance has evolved, we allow buildings up to 10 stories in an urban mixed or mixed use urban zoning. And so we felt, well, that's not appropriate adjacent to Patty Lane and the 2 or 3 story buildings that are there. So that's why we are recommending a mixed use avenue as a transition there between that and everything west of Parmenter is where anything that's taller than 5 stories would be. There's nothing east of, with very few exceptions, with some exceptions along arterial streets and like Middleton Springs and the Allen Boulevard corridor where there's good bus service. We didn't want to see any 10-story buildings east of Parmenter. We recognize that 5 to 7-story buildings may be appropriate in other locations along Century and Allen, for example, in University. So, but where we knew that we didn't want to have such tall buildings is where we use avenue as a buffer, if you will. Did I explain that? Okay.
Yeah. And I'm just, again, I'm just hoping that we can figure out a way to, and you're studying it, you're trying to work this out. I can see that as we're talking through these things, trying to make sure that we're getting the appropriate densities and building heights on the appropriate sites. there was, I think we're gonna be dealing with the Allen Boulevard site very soon, I'm sure. That's one that we're gonna have to be looking at closely, and if Avenue mixed use is the appropriate designation for that, as well as the MRL designation. I'm sure that we'll be talking about this a lot, so I'm not going to waste a lot of time, but that's an example. The other one that you brought up in your list of properties that was the Stonefield Glen Shopping Center is mixed use avenue, I believe.
Number 14 is
Yeah,
what we
that's
called it.
mixed use avenue, but is really totally surrounded on all sides by, I think, single family housing. Maybe on the south side, there's some smaller multifamily pieces there that I'm having a hard time visualizing that jumping to 5 to 7 stories.
But you know what? Well, again, it's 5 stories. Mixed use avenue is, does not have the conditional use process to go higher. The only way you can go higher than 5 stories is with the
bonus.
the incentive, the bonuses, right? Which are not going to be that necessarily that easy to achieve. I mean, maybe, anyway, but with a bonus, you could. This is actually an example of where we are promoting some greater density. I think of this, one of my favorite examples, because I just remember the big debate about it and I see how it turned out. In Madison, Midvale and Tokay. That was a great debate 10 to 15 years ago. Nick knows what I'm referring to, where the Sequoia Library was, the old library. It was in a 1-story strip mall. And what went in has become a very successful neighborhood center that has provided services in what was otherwise exclusively relatively low density, single family housing. So obviously the Stonefield Shopping Center is the only commercial activity within easily a mile, well, about a mile. And so that's clearly where we're focusing on that type of activity. We could do a mixed use neighborhood, I suppose. And I don't know why we didn't specifically think of that, or why we didn't go with that. I mean, we thought of it, but I think we just felt this is one of those cases where it's the neighborhood center, if you will.
Yep. And that's, again, that's kind of where I was like, okay, is somewhere between 3 and 5 stories. That's why I'm wondering if there's a way that we can reach that middle ground.
Yeah. I will also add where the arrow is pointing. This is a lot of people don't know this happened, but Randy, you probably know this area of Stonefield is currently zoned R2, but it's deed restricted that nobody in Stonefield who owns these lots can ever do a duplex. It was deed restricted to be single family only. We are still going to translate it from R2 to 2 family. I mean, where that's what the current zoning is. If we showed it less than that, that'd be a down zoning. So we are showing that as a 2-family duplex arrangement, but that's no different than what it's been for decades.
Mark, just looking at the legend to the left there, it looks like there are 2 with the designation IL, light industrial and medium industrial.
There's a typo, it should be IM, right?
Yeah, I'm looking on the left, but it's probably.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Here.
that's an I. Yeah, it should be IM. Thank you.
Emily has a comment.
Emily, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate the robust discussion, but I wanted to make sure that we are getting the information out on the 5 open houses in late September and early to mid-October, that they're at the public library at Cromrie Middle School. And I'm very excited that the city staff has committed themselves to having these 5 open houses, and excited that so many committees are going to be taking a look at this on top of having those public comments in basically the week of September 14th through September 20th. It's a wide variety of groups, so I'm glad that commissioners are very excited to discuss all of these zonings. And middle ground and is this appropriate? But I also look forward to the feedback from the open houses and the committee meetings. And I want to say a special thank you, not only for the map and its thoughtfulness, and maybe they're not perfect just yet, but for draft one, it is very detailed. It seems very thoughtful. Could it be better? Probably. But 8 committees and 5 open houses, I think will get us there. I have faith.
And Mayor, if I may add to that, thank you for that, for the kudos, I guess. I just wanted to briefly mention how we plan to publicize those open houses. We, this Friday, have set in motion a plan for various electronic communications to our listservs, various listserv subscriber lists that we have. I mentioned those in an email that I sent to you earlier today. I'm not going to review that now, but we do have a plan for reaching out to our listservs, posts on social media channels. We will email several local organizations, the Chamber of Commerce, Madison Commercial Real Estate, Realtors Association, Smart Growth Madison, Greater Madison. We also plan to email developers and property managers that we know that are active in the Middleton area, as well as, of course, provide information to our local journalists, or the Times Tribune and the Middleton Review. We are planning to post this flyer, whatever it is. I've been taking notes on it. There we go, this flyer in color. We'll post that around in visible locations. And I'm really excited that we are doing this. We're not going to do a mailing to individual property owners. We're not required to by state law. And Wausau did not do that. But we are going to do something almost as good, which is we are putting an insert in utility bills. And there are 6,500 accounts served by that get quarterly utility bills. And so they will have a blurb, a third of a page information about the open houses, specifically the last 2. They will find out in time about the open houses that are on the whatever it is. Those are the last 2 open houses, but they're the 9th and the 14th. So they'll get that in time. I'm
excited to hear that. Thank you. That's wonderful. All of those.
You're welcome.
I had one just additional comment. And I absolutely love the map. I can see how much work has gone into translating, the comprehensive plan and the previous zoning to find this space to move forward. We inherited this city. We didn't get to build it from a blank piece of paper, right? We inherited a big cross section of highways bisecting everything. And there's a little bit of heartache that it feels almost impossible to find a way to have the services that people need within walking distance, right? Like, I don't know how to do that. That we have right now significant food deserts where people need to walk more than a quarter mile, more than a mile, more than 2 miles to get to a grocery store, right? That it takes significant time with a bus to get to services like the doctor and a pharmacy and a grocery store. And I would love to see more mom and pop opportunities for the little vittles, right? The little grocery stores that used to exist. And if the zoning could possibly just fine tooth comb through this and find other little pockets like the Stonefield area where it would be possible to put in a small hometown pharmacy, or there's the vet clinic there, but could there be a grocery store there, right? There could be. And are there other little pockets that we can find in existing neighborhoods where there are good intersections and maybe some existing businesses, and we could rezone those in a way that in the future, if there were higher density, if it was more, people wanted to be more pedestrian, right? People wanted to get rid of their cars. Would there be opportunities for these mom and pop businesses to find little places to put their shop that we could provide the opportunity for more pedestrianism? That's a little heartache that I don't see those opportunities on the map.
Thank you for that comment. Well said. Well, thank you, Mayor, for reminding us of the 5 open houses. Plan commission members aren't required to attend all 5, are we?
Just 4 of them. We're gonna take
I will
attendance.
publicize the October ones in my October e-news that will go out. And I will have another crack at this, right? So-
Yeah, so the idea is that in 2 weeks, we're currently having committee meetings this week and next. And the idea is to synthesize the feedback we get, both through the committee process as well as we've gotten some individual questions and comments, and present that to you for further guidance at your meeting in 2 weeks. And that will be more focused on the zoning text again.
Great.
So, and then at that point, we're hoping that you feel comfortable enough that we can schedule the hearing, a public hearing for the October 24th meeting, I think it is. And that, of course, will then fulfill the obligation of a class 2 notice with, and that'll be a formal hearing. So that is our current timeline and game plan.
All right, great. In light of the time, unless there's some very pressing comment or question about the zoning code rewrite, I would say we have reached the end of our agenda. And so we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.